ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगना रघुनाथामृतं तं सजीवं सादवैतं सावधूतं परिजनाः सहितं कृष्णाचरितं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादां सहगना ललितं श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णकृष्णाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामी नितिनम् नमस्ते सरस्वते देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विघ्नदेशतारिणे नमो महावदन्ये कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त श्रीराधा कान्त नमोस्तुते तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी श्रीराधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये नीलाचल निवासाय नित्याय परमात्मने बलभद्र सुभद्राभ्यां जगन्नाथाय ते नमः। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौरभक्तवृन्द हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम। We are going to read the and meditate on the meditations given by His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. These meditations are in the book Die Before Dying from the Beggar series. Today, let's read the first meditation. On August 5, 2004, I truly began the process of ending my existence on this planet in this body. During that week, I discovered that I had sugar diabetes and advanced melanoma. Prior to that time, I knew of other health problems, but they were insignificant in contrast to the new ones that had developed. The old health problems should have been enough in themselves to alert me that my body is very fragile. Just having a material body is itself a disease because the body incarcerates the soul and limits the soul from its most blissful, fulfilling activities. Every day, people must confront the shocking news that they or someone near to them has become possessed by a life threatening disease. When people have this encounter, they feel angry, bewildered, and cheated, wondering why it must happen to them. They would like to accept that these kinds of disasters happen to others and not to themselves. We forget that practically everyone who meets such a destiny is thinking the same. Why has this happened to me instead of to someone else? If each person had their wish, then these misfortunes would be experienced by others and never by themselves. The person who feels cheated is eager to project their misfortune on others. Such people are concerned about not being cheated themselves while being eager to cheat others. People normally feel some happiness even if others are suffering, as long as they are not personally experiencing any difficulties. How wonderful it would be if we could think of ourselves as fortunate when we are chosen to experience challenges for our growth, which can relieve another from having to undergo the same difficulties. This, of course, is the mood of a high class devotee who is called Paradukha Dukhi, a devotee who feels the miseries of others and enjoys their happiness with them. The feelings of anger and bewilderment are due to not understanding that the Supreme Lord's mercy comes in many different ways. It is easy to accept God's mercy when we get what we want. This is like mercy coming from the front. However, when it comes from the side, it can be bewildering, and even more so when it comes from behind. When it comes from behind, it can be extremely disturbing because the conditioned jiva loves to feel that he or she is in control. This, of course, is a big illusion, for we are always at the mercy of the Lord. However, we normally think that we are much more in control than we really are. Actually, the Lord's mercy coming from behind, as in the case of an aberrant calamity, is even more an expression of the Lord's mercy, because in such instances, the Lord helps the jiva to accept and perceive her eternal identity as a wonderfully dependent servant. We must remind ourselves that the Lord is always finding ways to send out His love. As we remind ourselves of this, it becomes easier to take advantage of the many opportunities that manifest. Life is full of adventures and opportunities to serve humanity and glorify the Lord. When a person can accept everything as an expression of Krishna's mercy and love, nothing can be too disturbing. Every moment becomes another opportunity to serve humanity, worship the Supreme, and express gratitude. August 5 was truly a rebirth For it gave me the chance to die, to live. I, the beggar, am full of gratitude for receiving the Lord's mercy from the front, from all the sides, and yes, most wonderfully, from the back. This meditation is entitled as I Died on August 5. Maharaj wrote this in 2004. The platform of duality exists on the mental plane. In the domain of spirit, there is individuality, but there is no duality. There is fixity of relationship with Krishna. And one's activities, one's thoughts, one's meditations circumambulate Krishna. What is a problem? We can see in our lives, different phases of our lives. That how we have spent so much time and energy worrying about crying for a problem, which, if we reflect now, was so paltry, so tiny. But we had spent days and days and months hankering, harping on that same hankering note. In fact, the journey of life is such that a problem remains a problem as long as it is standalone. And a problem ceases to be a problem when one interfaces a bigger problem. Then the first problem becomes insignificant. And that's how the first problem dies off. So the problem is only a problem till one interfaces a bigger problem. Therefore, it is very important to understand what is the problem. Otherwise, as life proceeds, one will simply interface bigger and bigger problems. Or one will simply go on encountering bigger and bigger problems. So, just like a child may have a big problem that he is not getting the amount of chocolates he wants, or is not getting the toy he wants. That's a big problem for him. When we pass out, our problem maybe we want a higher salary job. So in old age, the problem will be one may be wanting health. And all the time one wants recognition, fan following, so on. So why this particular cascade of a volley of problems one after the other with increasing amplitudes and intensity? So if we try to understand, our bodies, our mental systems are so arranged that so as to aid us fully to pull our consciousness towards transcendence. So therefore when life begins, because a person, the small child or the baby child, so the baby child fellow, he is in ignorance and illusion. Because he's so much into illusion and his ignorance, he is allowed. So you will see the problems for him are very less. So he is allowed a lot of space. So the problems are very small and he has a lot of time. So therefore you will see generally children for small things they keep crying. For small things they keep crying. If somebody doesn't look at them, they cry. The parents don't look at them, they cry. They cry for small things. Somebody takes away what they want, they cry. Small things. Their relatives don't pick them up in the godi, they will cry. So small things. And very small. But if you see actually, In that way, if you say the window for a child to explore this material world is big, so that he can understand what is this world about. Therefore, you will see the first 1 or 2 years of life, uh, person's index of learning or the rate of learning is the maximum, because so fast child gets adapted to a completely new ambience, completely different culture, which he had no interface of. So that's the point. But as life starts progressing, one is interfacing bigger and bigger problems. Just like failing in nursery is a small problem, but failing in 12th is really a big problem. Many schools till higher classes, fail pass is not considered only. In the Western world, till class 5, there is no examination only. The first exam of a person's life is at class 5, final exam. And that is just to qualify one from primary to secondary. That's it. The next exam he has to face is the end of class 10th. That's it. There are no exams. 3 exams he comes to the college. That's it. One, two, three, finish. That's the Western world. So the point is that, therefore, the smaller classes, whether you pass or fail, is no problem. Therefore, in Australia, they don't consider it only. They say, okay, don't have exam only. What is the use of it? Pass, fail, don't know. Where it is something substantial, there you keep a test. So that's called as lazy intelligence. So anyways, the point is that that is not a very big problem. But when it comes to careers scenario, then it becomes a big problem. Pass, fail, percentile becomes a big problem. So we see that why are we interfacing bigger and bigger problems? The material nature is pushing us, poking and pushing us to transcend our consciousness. Therefore, you will see the material space is becoming lesser and lesser. Like people say, in childhood, one can have a chill out life. Why? Because one doesn't have to worry about so many responsibilities. One can. So, actually, if you see, the allowance given by material nature is tremendous at that stage. But when one graduates, say for example, then one cannot live that kind of chill life, because there are so many responsibilities. One is supposed to be mature. One is supposed to see, even if a child misbehaves, nobody minds it so much. But if an adult misbehaves, he'll get a tight one. Is it not? Like that. The child may go give a slap on the other person, even an unknown person. Then person will not say anything. Okay, fine, small child. And if some adult goes, he'll get three back. Is it not? Right. That way. A child can shout, nobody will mind against one child. If you shout, I shout, finish. Is it not? That's the point. So the allowance given to the child is too much. But then the allowance is being taken off. Why? Because the whole purpose is that we uh, transcend our consciousness. In this way, we understand that the material body and the material mind is just a vehicle. If you don't take benefit of it, it is going to pass away. The material body and mind is just a vehicle. Opportunity which is given to us to transcend. So therefore, the signal from life, Maharaj is highlighting here so much. We should understand the signal from life. The signal from life is to become more and more spiritually serious. that yes, it is increasingly becoming more and more clear that material world is not a place for me. That yes, it is becoming increasingly clear that soon I will have to leave my cherished body. One has to understand time is less. That's the point. So every machinery has its utility, purpose. There is no machinery without a purpose, without any utility. Now the point is that if we use the machinery for its utility, then we can feel satisfied that the machinery has worked fine. Then the machinery can best perform also. We would give the example of taking a bench and plowing a field. It is such an unfortunate situation, is it not? The bench will also be spoiled, the field will also not be plowed. So bench doesn't have a utility on has it utility on the NH highway, is it not? So if we misplace the machinery and utilize it for a wrong utility, then the machinery will malperform or malfunction. And malfunction is even more painful that way. In the same way, actually, the machinery of the human body has a utility that it pushes us towards transcendence. It pushes us towards transcendence. And if you don't utilize it for this purpose, then the human body malfunctions. And because of that malfunctioning or abnormal functioning, what happens is that a person will be much more in pain and agony than even what he was destined to. Just like fasting, say for example. Now, fasting has a purpose. If that purpose is lost, fasting has no meaning. It is a bogus ordeal. That's it. Fasting has a purpose. The purpose of fasting is obviously if one can, or if one is happily able to do according to one's capacity, if one can do according to one's capacity, then the purpose of fasting is to engage more in spiritual activities. Purpose of fasting is not to not eat, not cook, not eat. But if one is not cooking, one is not eating, but one is simply sleeping, what is the use of that fasting? It is much more bogus than any other normal day, is it not? Purpose is forgotten, it becomes a very shabby affair, is it not? So therefore, if one is sitting in a fasting day and one is just meditating, how much time is remaining, you know, where all the the tremors of pain are there in my stomach. If one is just meditating on that, taking the stomach, pressing, oh, ooh, ee, ah, making different poses like that, looking at others, इसका क्या है, गिर गया, चलो, मैं नहीं गिरा, So what is the use of that? So shameful, performance, is it not? Such a shameful performance. Better one can eat nicely and then do some bhakti. Is it not? That's the point. So the purpose is forgotten, it becomes such a shabby affair, is it not? Artificial shabby, is it not? Similarly, actually, clinging on to the material priorities, clinging on to material desires makes one's life a very shabby affair because that is not the purpose of human life. That's not what human life is meant for. Yes, we may say, okay, that there is a phase in our life in which we do not understand any such, we really don't interface any such problems because they are all shaded for us. Krishna has arranged the shading for us. But that was for some time, is it not? Now we should grade ourselves up, is it not? So shade only remains. So Krishna's offered us a shade for some time. That's fine. So one did fun and frolic. Now the shade period is over. Now the upgrade period is there. So why should we be upset about it? That's the point. It's like initial days when Prabhupada was preaching. So the devotees, initial days, Prabhupada would offer them a full license to take a lot of sweet prasad. The ISKCON bullets. Every temple Prabhupada would have a full jar, which was always full, and it had some gulab jamuns. And any devotee going, coming out will just pop one in his mouth. Enjoy the bliss of Krishna consciousness. ISKCON bullets. Take one. Be happy. After some months, Prabhupada passed a resolution, announced a resolution. No, no more ISKCON bullets, no more that jar for devotees. And devotees became very upset. They were no, they were shocked. They were startled. Shocked. They went to Prabhupada saying, "How will you survive? No sweet prasad, no Mahaprasad sweet." Uh, so, so Prabhupada said, "When I told you take it, you happily accepted. Now I'm telling you don't take it. Why you're not happily accepting? You know." So, are you? So the point. That is the point. Whose disciple we are? We are disciple of Gulab Jamun, or we are disciple of the saintly person. Is it not? That's the point which you have to understand. Is it not? So that's what Maharaj is telling. Mercy from the front. Krishna may give us mercy from the front to encourage us for some time. For some time, the Lord may give us mercy from the front just to encourage us. That okay, take the encouragement, take it up. The Lord may give us. But that doesn't mean that that is all in all. So the same Lord, when He gives mercy from the front, we very happily accept and we're very grateful and we give the lecture Krishna is merciful. When Krishna sees, then Krishna says, okay, let me give from the side a little bit and then see what happens. So He gives from the side if we start blaming and claiming our right that because I'm a devotee, I'm such a seasoned and established devotee. Because of that, all the Guru Parampara and the Acharyas are obliged to set right my affairs. Then that means we have not caught the substance, the pulse of bhakti. We are still hovering around on a very superficial plane. That's what it means. And when material nature is punching on the face, when there is outright uh, and an outright interface of negativity, then it is mercy from the back. Every time Maharaj is explaining, it is mercy. Every time it is a game of mercy. So it's just like, why it is a game of mercy? That is what is to be understood. Why is it so? It is a game of mercy because it is an upheaval only on the temporary plane. On the eternal plane, in the integral, there is no loss. That's the point. Rather, there will be an added gain. That's the idea.